Bitcoin is up nearly 135% in 2023, and the year is not over yet. So is now the time to buy Bitcoin, or should you just let this most recent crypto wave pass you by? Let's go ahead and break it down. I don't think at this point that we need to explain what Bitcoin is and what it does, but I will say this: between 2022 and now, it has had a wild ride. Celsius went bankrupt and doesn't exist anymore. FTX, which had its own building and arena, I think where the Miami Heat used to play, or still play, I guess I renamed it, that's gone now. That is gone. The founder of that company, what is his name? Sam Bankman-Fried, SBF, he gone to jail. Okay, so it has been a wild ride. However, as Bitcoin has started to rise, and as investors, we should at least raise an eyebrow to see whether or not it makes sense to add back to our portfolios or even continue holding for those who may have. So I took some notes and I want to deliver some of those points to you now. The first thing is this: if you're going to buy any cryptocurrency, especially Bitcoin, know that it is volatile, meaning you can be rich one day and it can fall apart the next. And no, that is not normal, okay? I know that 2020 and 2021 has really warped people's brains on what they think is normal and what is not. But here's the thing, okay? There have been 5 times since the birth of Bitcoin in about 2009, so in the last 14 years, that asset has fallen by 50% or more 5 different times. 5 times. Again, that is not normal. Do you know how many times the stock market has fallen by 50% since then? 0. It has not happened, okay? During the pandemic, if my memory serves me correctly, I believe that was about 22%. It's 22% drop during the pandemic. Now, there's somebody sitting there typing right now saying, well, what about the Great Recession when the stock market fell significantly, so on and so forth? First off, what date was that? Okay, that was 2007, 2008. If I remember correctly there, and I was in high school back then, I want to say it was about 47%. So that still wasn't a 50% drop, nor is that within the time frame of Bitcoin. So it is far more volatile than the stock market, which tells me you shouldn't be investing a ton of money in it. I didn't say 0. You can invest in it, right? But I don't think you should be investing a ton of money in it. The next thing you should know is the fact that the whole hedge against inflation, go back, check the Googles, right, and go and search by date, and you will see that very early on, I would argue 2017 and beyond, people were saying it was a hedge against inflation, it was digital gold. That's not the case. In fact, if you are to look at how Bitcoin has performed, you'll see as inflation took off, right? Remember January 2023, when we found out that inflation was at 9%, Bitcoin fell. And in fact, Bitcoin continued to fall as inflation went up. And then this year, 2023, as inflation started to come down, which we have reported on many times on this channel, Bitcoin started to rise. So it's actually going in the opposite direction, which is not something that most people expected. You would thought, or at least the case was, as inflation goes up, people move to Bitcoin, and that's not the case. We also saw that people were putting their money, their paychecks in Bitcoin. Odell Beckham Jr., NFL player, I think he now plays for the Ravens. He, at one point, was getting his salary in Bitcoin. Didn't work out, right? It doesn't seem to be as useful as what most people thought. Now, whether or not that's going to have an impact on people buying it, or whether it's going to rise in 2024, I would argue that that is unknown. Okay, I don't think anybody really knows. But I will say is this: there seems to be a pattern. Okay, anytime something happens 5 times in 14 years, it's got to be some sort of pattern. Now, I'm not saying that you can predict it to a T, but I will say this: if you were to ask me to just draw in the back of an envelope what I think is going to happen to Bitcoin and what I think is going to happen next year, I would argue it is going to continue to rise, and I would argue that in 2025 is going to fall another 50%. It just seems to be the pattern. It rises for about a year and a half, and then it falls. And it stays there for about a year and a half, and then it rises again. That's just what the pattern has been, especially once it became mainstream in 2017. So look at how it's performed from 2017 to now. And I would also say that once you start to see commercials, once you start to see it on CNN and whatever news sites you start to watch, and starts to get popular, you start to see these Instagram accounts come back online from their bearish days, from hibernation, that is when it's time to get out, right? So I'm starting to see some commercials now, but I'm not getting the exact same buzz right now than it was prior to. I would argue once it starts to hit that $50,000, $60,000 level, if it gets there, that is when, you know, things are going to teeter a bit. Now, I'm not somebody who's going to get up here and tell you that's going to 75,000 or 100,000 in 2024 at any date. That's just not me. I don't know it well enough to do that. And I really don't think anybody knows it well enough to know exactly what price target is supposed to hit. I just think it will rise in 24 and then fall in 25, just based on how this asset has performed in the past. The main thing though, for you as an investor, is to make sure you are protected. There are two ways to do that. Number one, if you want to benefit from the rise of crypto and Bitcoin, especially if it starts to continue to go up, but you don't want to invest in it directly because either you don't understand or you just don't like losing money when you sleep because it's a 24-hour market, you can invest in Coinbase. Coinbase does tend to mirror how Bitcoin does. I would also say that it really start to gain steam in October or so. Coinbase has. I would go there if you want to go with that. Now, personally, I do not like Coinbase. I don't like their business model. They charge fees for buying and selling investments. Who does it now? Right, especially when it comes to the stock market. So for me, I personally don't like Coinbase, but if you are somebody who prefers crypto but doesn't want it directly, Coinbase could be for you. There's also a Bitcoin ETF that's been making some buzz. I don't know if it is launched just yet, but when it does, we'll talk about it. The other way is just to protect yourself in terms of how much you are allocating, how much money you are putting into it. I've always recommended 5% or less for any one particular asset, including stocks. For me personally, I said 2 to 3% is what I'm gonna get to. Once I hit 3% of all my money, that's it. I'm just stopping there, because my goal as an investor, other than to make as much money as possible, is the fact that I want to afford to be wrong. That is my main thing. So if I'm wrong, I'm okay losing 2%. I'm okay losing 3%. I'm not okay losing 95% of my money, especially in the way that cryptocurrency tends to lose money and does so very quickly. So my thing is, you've got to be very careful. Set up whatever limit makes sense for you. Okay, 5% is just general rule of thumb, but whatever works for you, you need to have a hard and fast limit that you do not hurt yourself, and you want to make sure that you are diversified. If you're looking for other ways to diversify, make sure that your portfolio is in the best space possible for next year, then these are the videos that you want to check out next.